All right, you're good to go.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with our meeting tonight for the audit committee. First item on the agenda is to adopt the agenda. So does anybody have any issues with the agenda as it's written and as it was on the, I sent one and then Ashley and I tweaked it a little bit, but it was posted on the website. Does anybody have any issues with the agenda?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Okay.
Second, thank you, Bernie. All in favor? Aye, thanks. Okay, so I'm for anybody, just in case there's anybody watching that doesn't know everybody, can I just get everyone to introduce themselves? Starting with, as far as the committee members, starting with Debbie.
Hi, I'm Debbie Durazio.
Bernie.
Barney Kraus.
And I'm Julie Johnson, the chair. So the first item, I'm sorry, the agenda has the pledge, but since we're all at home and none of us are near a flag, I'm going to skip the pledge. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes. We've got two sets of minutes, the November 15th, 2021 and the January 26th, 2022. Debbie, I know Bernie, you wrote them up, so you probably don't have any issues.
Right, I have no issues.
But Debbie, do you have any comments or anything with the agenda?
No, they look good.
Okay, so again, I will go ahead and make a motion to adopt the minutes for both meetings.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. And so this comes to our main event is Mr. Kenny and Bree for our presentation of the audit for this year.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Once again, I'm Dan Kenny, partner with Cohn Resnick, and with me is Bree Cressline, senior associate with the firm, and we're here to present the Town of Dewey Beach's March 31, 2022 audit. Do you want Bree to put up the financial statements on screen for you, or does everyone have a copy?
I think that might be helpful just because we all have a copy, but I think because if anybody's watching, they wouldn't have a copy of it necessarily. So it might be helpful to do a screen share for that purpose.
That's fine. All right. So if you could give Bree authorization, and she'll go ahead and put up the first document. And what we're going to do this evening, we're going to go through the financial statements, and then we're going to go through those charged with governance document, and then the management letter.
Okay.
And then with the financial statements, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the independent auditor's report and just go through the statement in terms of the MD&A. I'm going to, go through it fairly quickly. You guys have had a chance to read it. I know it was posted, I believe, a week ago, so I know you've had a chance to look at it, but I still want to just go through some items with you guys, and I'll try to go pretty quickly so that you're not bored.
Okay.
All right. So first item within the financial statements I want to talk about is the independent auditor's report. And one thing I do want to point out on this independent auditor's report, there is a new audit standard, and it's audit statement of audit standards 134, and it's called auditor reporting and amendments, including amendments addressing disclosures in the audit of the financial statements. So if you were to look at this report as compared to the previous year, it's a little bit different. And so let me point out some of the differences. The format of the opinion itself is a little different. You'll note that the opinion is now up front. It's all the way to the top. And in the second paragraph, this is where we give our opinion. And we've indicated, in our opinion, the financial statements are fairly presented as of and for the year ended March 31, 2022. And in the previous year, if you would look at the previous year, that item was on the bottom of the statement. So now they sort of reordered it. The second item you'll notice is that under responsibilities management of financial statements, it's more descriptive. It gives a little more information about it. And the second paragraph is something that is new based on the standard that must be added. So that's in there as well. And then under auditor's responsibility, there's more information about the procedures performed on the financial statement information. So if you go to page 3, it talks about, in performing the audit in accordance with GAAP, which means generally accepted auditing standards. And just so you know, your audit was conducted in accordance with those standards and also government auditing standards. But what it does, it details out some of the procedures that we perform. And just so you know, this isn't any different than what we did last year in terms of the procedures, but this new reporting requirement requires us to disclose this within the independent auditor's report. I want to emphasize that there's no change in the scope of the work, but once again, it's more disclosure for you to kind of see exactly what we're doing. And then in terms of the RSI information, you guys have that particular information in accordance with GASB, and you have it in your MD&A and also in your pension information in the back of the statement. And then if you go to page 4, it talks a little bit about the supplemental information and some of the schedules associated with that. And then, as I mentioned, since your statement is done or your audit is done in accordance with government auditing standards, we also issue a report on internal control, which we will go over in the back of the statement. So, Bree, why don't you go ahead and go to the MD&A, which starts on page 6. And the MD&A, so it goes from pages 6 to 11.
And can I just interrupt you for just a second? I just want to, for the record, that Donna Alexander is on the call. She's not visible for some reason, but she is here. So our 4th member is here. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, no problem. So the MD&A goes from page 6 to 11, and what it does, it gives a narrative around, some of the information within the financial statements. It summarizes some of the financial statements themselves and gives narrative on the descriptions of, some of the increases and decreases throughout the year. So let's go to page 13 on your statement of financial position. So you can see your statement of financial position. You had a total net position of approximately 13.8 million. If you go to the next page on page 14, this is your statement of activities. And as you know, it starts out with expenses, then it discusses the program revenues associated with those particular expenses. And then your column below, it has your general revenues, and it goes through some of that information as well. And one item I want to point out on page 14, it says net unrealized gain on investments, and that's actually a loss. So on page 14, we're going to make that correction where it says gain, we're going to change it to loss when you see that. So as I'm going along, I've noticed a few things. I will point those out as we're going along. All right, so page 15. So this is your governmental funds. Of course, you have 2 funds. You got your general fund and your beach replenishment fund, and it indicates that your total assets and liabilities for each. And then you can see on your fund balance, you guys, do a nice job in defining what your committed fund balance items are. Street and infrastructure, and of course you set up your rainy day fund, and then you also go through your assignments, and you're very detailed on that as to what you've assigned your fund balance. And then of course you have your unassigned, at the bottom. So that's what page 15 indicates. And then also in your fund balance, you'll note that under the committed and assigned on page 24, which I'll get to a little bit later, there's a footnote that specifically goes through those particular items. And then also in detail, in note 11 on page 33, it also goes over on your rainy day fund, some of the particulars of what comprises the rainy day fund and how it's calculated. Okay, moving on, page 16. So whenever all governments they have your governmental activities, and then you have your governmental funds, and they're two bases of accounting. So whenever you have that, you have to show the reconciliation between those two statements, and that's what this particular statement does. The first number, the 11.8 million, that comes from page 15. We don't have to go back to page 15. I know you guys can do it yourself, but that number ties to page 15. And then on the bottom, the net position of the governmental activities, you'll find that on page 13. Okay, moving on, page 17. So once again, this is your governmental funds, your statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance, and it goes through the particulars of the revenues and the expenditures. And if you go to page 18, same concept on 18 as we had on the other page, where whenever you have a different basis of accounting, because you have two different statements, you have to show the reconciliation between these as well. So your total change in fund balance, governmental funds, that number 2013,562, you would be able to trace that back to page 17, and then it goes through the particular changes that are different, and then your change in net position of governmental activities, the 2321668, that's on page 14. So you can see how the reconciliation works. Okay, moving on. Pages 19 to 24 on note 2. This is your summary of significant accounting policies, and you haven't had any changes or any new accounting policies that were adopted within this year. So, and that goes from 19 to 24. And then if you go to page 24, it talks about note 3, your cash equivalents, and investments, and that goes from 24 to 27. And what it talks about is the different credit risk items that are out there, and then it talks about your cash and cash equivalents and your investments held at fair value, and those numbers, they also tie back to the front part of your statement. It also discloses the fair value measurement, because your investments are at fair value, and it goes through your level 1, 2, or 3, and those are actually defined on page 26. And then it also carries over to page 27. So it gives you all the detail about your investments and what you guys have your money invested in. All right, and then note 4, this is your capital assets. You can see the bottom number 2028146, that ties to your page 13 on the face of your statement. It's made up of 2 numbers, and so that's on page 13. And then if you go to page 28, this is where you have your change in your liability accounts. You have your compensated absences. You can see the increase there. And then in your net pension liability, you actually had a decrease, and that actually turned into a net pension asset. And if you go to your note 7, so note 7, that actually is fairly lengthy. It goes from pages 28 to 32, goes over all the plan information, and details the basis of presentation, talks about the methodology. On page 30, it goes through the net pension liability, but like I said, it's now an asset, because your total liability less the plan's net position, you actually have an asset on there, so it's 733,000. And then also on page 30, it talks about the actuarial assumptions. If you notice the second sentence under actuarial assumption, it says valuation as of June 30, 2010. That's not right. It's 2020. So we'll make sure we make that change from the 1 to the 2. And if you go to page 31, this is always a sensitive estimate that I always like to point out to the readers of the financial statements, because of your your net pension asset, it's based on assumptions. And so if the assumptions were to change with respect to the discount rate, this shows what would happen if it went up, if it decreased by 1% or it increased by 1%, what would the effect be on your net pension asset? So I wanted to point that out to you. And then 32, this is where it goes over the deferred outflows and inflows. And then those particular numbers, they also tie back to the front of your financial statement as well. And in the underneath the table where it says the 98,566 of deferred outflows, it says net pension liability. Once again, it's an asset. So I'm going to change the word from a liability to an asset, and instead of a reduction, it's going to say an increase. So we'll make that tweak on the next draft. Okay, moving along. On page 33. So once again, as I mentioned, in the front of your statement, you guys have the detail of what's in your non-spendable, your restricted, your committed. And this is the narrative around all those particular items. And it goes from page 33 to 34. You guys have done, a good job in describing it, going through it, and you've actually assigned things properly in terms of, the particular, whether it should be committed or assigned, etc. Okay, moving on to the RSI information. So the RSI information, if we go to page 36, one item I want to point out under revenues, where it says investment income, it's actually, you do have investment income, but there's a line for the net unrealized loss number that was netted in here. So what we're going to do is, if you were to go back to page 17 on the statement, you would see investment income, and then below that you would see the net unrealized loss. So we're going to add the net unrealized loss number in there, and that's a negative 48,473. And then your investment income number, it says negative 37,015. That's going to be a positive 11,458, but the net number will be 37,015. So I wanted to point that out. So we'll make that change. Okay, moving on. 37, once again, this relates to your pension plan info, just some of the particulars there, 37 and 38. And then on 39, this is the actuarial assumptions. And here I also think that we may add some information for any trends or assumptions that have changed in the past few years. So Julie and committee members, we'll send something out to management if this page changes significantly more than what we have on here. I'll let you know that. And of course, all the other changes, we'll make those, but I'll let you know if this page changes as well. Okay. And then moving on to page 41. Okay, if you go to 41, once again, this is a comparative analysis for the past 4 years. I want to point out that on page 41, if you go to the 2022 line under other, you'll see a dash, but the amount really should be 2360 because your total assets, you guys would know this, should equal your total liabilities and deferred inflows. And you can see it doesn't balance because it didn't carry over. There was a cell that didn't carry over. So I picked that up. So anyway, so the 2360 will be added to that receivable other line, and therefore your total balance will be 6632829, which will tie to the bottom of that page. And then you guys have probably picked this up as well. If you look at 2021, you'll see the total assets 4322147, and then on the liabilities it says 4322146. We'll change that to a 7, and the number that is going to change is the unearned revenue number. It should be 48,846 instead of 48,845. So just a couple little gnats that we noticed, but I wanted to bring them up here and let you know and not just be transparent with you guys about that. All right, and then if you go to page 43, once again, this is a 4-year comparison, and this is on the beach replenishment fund. You'll notice that then in 19, 21, and 22, all the assets equal to liabilities, et cetera, et cetera. 20 doesn't, and the reason is because this interfund payable of 7772, somehow it's not adding up. So we'll fix that, and the number is right. And you can see if you were to add it, it would come up to the 4765397. So I wanted to point that out. And okay, so that's it for the statement. Now, if you go to pages 45 and 46, as I mentioned in the independent auditor's report, because we do our audit in accordance with government auditing standards, we have to issue this report on internal control and financial reporting, and then also report on compliance and other matters. And in the internal control over financial reporting, we didn't notice or we didn't identify any material weaknesses. And then under report and compliance and other matters, the results of our test disclosed no instances of non-compliance. So I wanted to point that out to you. All right, so that is the financial statement. So let me go through the other 2 documents, and then we can circle back and answer any questions that you may have. So the next item is those charged with governance. So Bree, if you can pull that up, and I'll go through pretty quickly with you guys with that. So our responsibility in relation to the audit, of course, that was pretty much described in our in the engagement letter, and also it was talked a little bit about in the independent auditor's report. Plan, scope, and timing of the audit is noted here. We've complied with all ethic requirements regarding independence. And then if you go to the next page, your significant accounting policies, once again, there were no changes there. Significant estimates, we talked about that. You have your net pension liability, that's significant estimate, and that's in your note 7. And significant unusual transactions, there weren't any of those. Identified or suspected fraud. So there wasn't any identified or suspected fraud other than what was noted here. There was a phishing event that happened, and the loss to the town was approximately $1,500. And management has implemented an additional procedure to prevent a similar event in the future. And so once again, it was phishing incident, $1,500, and I'll let management talk about that. If you guys have questions pertaining to that. There were no significant difficulties encountered during the audit. All corrected misstatements have been made by management. There were no disagreements with management. And then the rest of the items, you could take a look at that. There were no consultations with other accountants. And if you go to the last page, there weren't any other significant matters, findings, or issues to discuss. And the other information in the documents, this was discussed in the independent auditor's report that I went over. Okay, so that's that. And then now let's go to the management letter. So the management letter, we have 3 comments, and these comments are similar to the previous years. Management has made progress on these. So if you were to compare these comments to the previous year, you could see that management has worked on a few things, and that's what we noted here. The policy procedure handbook. I think in the previous year it talked about, they didn't really have any policies set up or procedures. So now management does have written policies and procedures for some of the major business processes, and specifically for dispersing funds, for bank recs, for payroll, and for cash receipts. And they are working with a consultant to, finalize some of their other processes and, sort of formalize the document. So we wanted to keep it in here because we wanted to sort of note that, hey, they have made progress, but, there still are, a few things out there that they are working on. Fund balance, last year and in previous years, we've had a comment about it, and in the past several years, management and some other folks have done a good job in formulating the policy, coming up with it, putting something together, and really trying to work through it. And we wanted to keep it in here because there's just things. This is something that it's sort of an ongoing thing, and you have to formalize, and you got to make sure you get everything in there in terms of what the GASB wants and some of these specifics. But the good news is, you guys have a policy, you've documented it. It's just, you probably have to expand on it a little bit more, and we can, and I specifically can work with management, to continue to flush that out. But as you can see in your fund balance, you guys have a rainy day fund set up, and you still have money in your unassigned. So anyway, so that's that comment. And then on IT, this is an area where, we had a comment in previous years, and management has contracted with an outside vendor to do a, full SRA, security risk assessment. And they did issue a report with findings, and management is sort of working with the vendor to go through, what they discussed in terms of the protocol and the procedure. So they're working on that. But once again, that's something you're probably always going to have in this day and age. So I wanted to point that out. All right, and then lastly, we know this is due August 15th. We know you guys have had it for a week. We would appreciate if you have questions, to try to get them to management/us, as soon as you can, so that we can go through it, with management and make any necessary changes. We don't want to, once we go final on the 15th, we don't want to make any changes at all, because if we do, you have to put in your opinion what has changed, and it takes a little bit of time to reissue it. And you guys, since we've been the auditor, you haven't had to do that. So we want to make sure that, we/management answer any questions and get that done. So I want to make you aware of that. And then, of course, for your note 10, we still have to get a legal letter update and find out, exactly what's going on there. But in terms of the audit, the way you do it is you do it near the end. You don't do it in the middle. You got to do it near the end, because you're responsible for disclosing everything up to the date of issuance of report. And that's really it. I mean, there's a few other things that we have to do administratively. We are going to have our review process finish out. I'm still going through it, and then also one of my other partners is going to go through it, so he may have some comments or questions. But if there's anything of significant, we'll discuss with management and, of course, the audit committee. Okay.
Gary, let me ask you real quick. When is the commissioners meeting in August? What's the date?
The 19th.
The 19th. Okay,
Yeah.
so. And if I remember, because I think we ran into this last year, we have to just be able to present by the 19th, or is there, remind me, I know we kind of ran into this before.
I honestly do not know. I have not thought that through or checked back on that. I don't know, Bill, do you recall?
So last year, Julie, you actually came to the meeting and presented during the August meeting.
Right. Well, no, I realize I did that, but I guess my question is, and I guess I need to figure out, is if the commissioners meeting is after when the due date for the 15th, does that pose any problem? Because technically the audit isn't approved by the commissioners until the 19th. Are we going to run into any issues?
Yeah, I'll ask Ashley about that.
Yeah, we have to check into that, because I honestly don't know. We should look at what we did last year as well, and I just don't recall.
Yeah, I mean, I know I presented, and I feel like it was approved, and it was before the 15th, but there was something weird, and I'm sorry, it's been a year, so it's hard to remember.
So Julie, I'm looking at it, and the date that we have written on here is August 13th.
Okay.
So you must have approved it, and like, I don't know when your meeting was, but I can tell you this date, the final date was August 13th.
Okay.
What was the date? Last year?
Yeah,
Last
that was
year,
last year.
We approved it with
Julie,
your-
last
with your
year,
change.
Oh, wait, hang
meeting-
on. Okay.
last year, the commissioners meeting was on the second Friday. Now it's on the third.
Okay. So that was
That's
the
where the
difference.
issue is.
Okay. Bernie, you were going to say something?
What I was saying, though, what we did last year, we did the audit committee, we approved it with the changes that Dan had identified.
Mentioned. Right. That's, I mean, that was it was more of the issue with the 15th being the deadline and then when the commissioners meeting is. But I think if the audit committee approves it prior to the 15th, even if we don't get it to the committee, even if we can't present it to the commissioners on the 19th, I think we're still in good shape as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, and we're more than happy to send another draft. You can post it and we can meet again by Zoom. You know, we're
Okay.
flexible. I'll be more than happy to do that. Not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Dan? Anyone? Bernie, any thoughts? No? Okay. Debbie, any?
The only thing I was concerned about is the security, or the IT security audit. Obviously came up with some issues, as they always do, and we knew there would be. I feel like the key ones present some things we probably ought to put in the audit that we're working to fix, and how the management is going to address those, because you know, security audits come up with some pretty big liabilities, if you will, or possible liabilities.
Well, I think it's mentioned that they're working with them. I don't know. I mean, how much more specific you want to
Well,
be within this document?
Let's just say it comes up with a big security hole that we have.
Right.
Right? Is management going? I mean, I feel like we ought to at least have, even within our group, have had a list of it. We could have seen the audit to see how significant some of these things are, and how they would affect us, or possibly affect us, if management is going to look at them initially, or if we're going to wait, or if they're a liability to us. I mean, just sort of saying there's an audit, and I mean, there was a security audit, and there's some stuff, and management is working on it, leaves me a little concerned.
Bill, do you want to address that at all?
Yeah, so
And Bill, before you address it, let me just say
Right.
one thing. So from our standpoint, what we can't do, because it's you know, we can't list all that information because
It's a different
It's
vendor.
security. I get it.
Exactly. So
But
Okay.
we probably, as a committee, ought to be able to be involved in that. Or, I mean, I understand it can't be public information, but
Right.
of course, you know, this financial stuff is pretty public information too. So I'm just saying that I think that, you know, kind of just saying that where's the oversight on that, I guess, is where I'm saying. What committee is going to have the oversight on whether management is going to plug those security holes or not? I mean, a fishing expedition, I get it. There could be a hole in one of our systems and money could be draining out. Not that it is. I'm just saying that it's being glossed over, at least in this particular dialogue. And where's the oversight on that one?
Well, and I think that's true, but to Dan's point, I mean, it can't really be fleshed out in this document. I think it's something we can follow up with management and to look at that, but I don't think it's something for the audit document. Bill, do you want to say anything else about that?
Yeah, so there were some areas identified as laid out here. We know what those areas are. We've identified them. We do not want them public, of course.
Of course.
We've talked to our attorney about that, and he has told us at this point we do not need to turn them over. We are working on it. We are addressing those issues, and then after we do address and mitigate the findings, at some point they may be released. But I can assure you If you have any doubts that we are not working on this, I'd love to meet with any individuals on the audit committee one-on-one and discuss this, or we can discuss it further here.
I'm just looking for oversight. It doesn't necessarily have to be ours. Is the audit committee responsible for the oversight, or is there another committee that's responsible for the oversight of that? That's all I'm talking about. I understand you can't put it in this document, but it could represent a significant issue for us. That's all.
Well, I think the problem too with quote unquote oversight is that, as Bill said, like, we obviously don't want to identify that in public. And because of FOIA, if we are the oversight for those issues, then we have to make it public.
Okay.
Right?
So the auditors, do you typically deal with IT security issues in your audits, or how are they handled in other businesses or companies?
So what we do is we look at IT as it relates to the financial reporting system. So how it affects the financial reporting system, based on the audit, not necessarily all the other things that IT relates to. So our responsibility is to, once again, sort of understand the system in terms of the general controls surrounding financial reporting, which we've done. And so, that's sort of our responsibility. But the fact that you guys did have we've had the comment the last couple of years, because I can tell you in every business and or governmental entity, we have a comment about IT because it's ever changing, it's evolving, and it's something that, management and or any other committee, you got to really stay on top of. And so, we always bring it up because it's ever changing and it's evolving. And, it's something that, you have to put some thought to and structure around it. So that's what we've done. And that's our responsibility.
Okay.
Donna, I know you said you can hear us, but are you there? Do you have any comments? Okay, so she can hear us, but apparently we can't hear her.
Julie,
Yes, Gary.
I just went back and looked at the timing from last year. Your committee apparently met on the 9th, I think, and you I believe, made a recommendation then to approve the report. And as Dan said, the report was dated August 13th. The commissioners did not review, discuss, and approve this until September 10th. So I don't know if what problems we had to deal with, but we've got the same set of problems this year, although we're talking only about potentially a couple of days after, assuming that you make a recommendation to adopt the report.
Right. And I think, and that's what I was remembering, Gary, is that I feel like we looked into that, and the fact that the audit committee had met and had approved the, just with this couple of changes that were mentioned during this meeting. And then the final report was still done before the 15th, even though it wasn't approved by the commissioners till September. I think we all agreed that was, and I know it was looked into, which is why I was bringing it up again, but my memory was foggy about the exact timing. So I think as long as we, as a committee, vote to approve it to make a recommendation to the commissioners prior to the 15th, I think we're on solid ground, is my recollection. So anyway, Sheena, do you have any thoughts or comments?
I have no opinion whatsoever.
I know that's not true, but as far as this, you're fine. Okay. Kate, do we have anybody in the waiting room that wants to make a comment?
You do not.
Okay. So we're good. So before I'm comfortable, as far as I'm concerned, I'm comfortable with where we are with the, with the exceptions of some editing that Dan has already spoken about that need to be made, kind things. Does Debbie or Bernie, since we can't hear Donna, do you have any other thoughts about this?
Yeah, let's do what we did last year, which was just what you discussed. We
Okay.
approve it based on the comments and changes that Dan identified.
So Bernie, are you making a motion?
Yes, I am. I'll make a motion that we approve approve the audit reports to be submitted to the council pending the recommended changes identified by Dan in his presentation.
I'll second that.
Thank you. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And Donna, we can't hear you, but since there are three of us, that still is a majority. So, okay. So with that being done, the next item on the agenda is any final comments from the public, which Kate informs me there's nobody out there in the waiting room. So do any of the committee members have any final comments? Bernie?
No.
Debbie?
Nope.
Okay. Well, I want to thank Dan and Bree for being here and for walking us through this. As always, we're very impressed by the work that Cohn Resnick has done for us and appreciate all of your time and effort. And I'm sorry, Gary, I didn't mean to ignore you. Do you have any final things, any final thoughts?
Oh, I didn't. No, I'm fine.
Okay. So on that note, I
Julie.
am going to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor? Thank
Aye.
you, everyone. We really
Aye.
appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.
Thanks,